My name is Clara Bennett, and I've spent most of my adult life making sure everything went according to plan, except my own life. I was the founder of Polaris Events, a Boston-based company that handled everything from political fundraisers to private galas. My team was small but efficient, and our reputation was spotless. If someone wanted an event that screamed perfection, they called me. That's how I met Leo Davenport. It was at a charity gala I was organizing for the Children's Hospital. Leo arrived late, just before dinner service, wearing a tuxedo that looked tailor-made and a smile that seemed to have been practiced since birth. He wasn't the loudest man in the room, but he didn't need to be. People gravitated toward him. He approached me near the stage. "You're the magician behind all this?" he asked, gesturing toward the hall. I was wondering who managed to make Boston's elite show up on time. I laughed politely. "Organization and fear," I said. "A powerful combination." He smiled, intrigued. "My mother's hosting a fundraiser next month. She's been searching for someone with your kind of efficiency." That was how it started, a working relationship that turned personal within months. By the time we hosted Vivian Davenport's fundraiser, I already knew every detail about her preferences: white orchids, French champagne, and a guest list that read like a who's who of old Boston money. The event went flawlessly. Vivian approached me afterward, her diamond earrings catching the chandelier light. "You do have an eye for presentation, Miss Bennett," she said. "Thank you," I replied. "It's rare for someone self-made to understand subtlety." I smiled, pretending not to hear the sting. Leo was nothing like his mother, at least, not at first. He was warm, attentive, ambitious. He took me to art exhibits and jazz clubs, told me stories about his childhood summers on Martha's Vineyard. He admired how hard I worked and often said he respected that I had built my career from scratch. But as our relationship grew, I noticed small things. The way he avoided disagreeing with Vivian. The way he'd smooth over her insults with phrases like "that's just her sense of humor." Still, when he proposed, in the Boston Public Garden at sunset, ring glinting like something from a movie, I said yes. The wedding was beautiful, excessive, and exhausting. I planned most of it myself, of course. Vivian insisted on helping. That meant she overruled nearly every decision. "The venue feels too modern. The color palette is too cold. These aren't the kind of guests Leo's father usually entertains." I compromised where I could, pushed back where it mattered. The day went perfectly on the surface. But beneath the perfection, something cold had settled between me and the Davenport family. I just didn't see how deep it went. After the wedding, I tried to fit in. I attended their weekend brunches, their charity auctions, their endless dinners where conversations revolved around who had bought what yacht or which acquaintance had been dreadfully gauche at the opera. When people asked what I did, Vivian always answered for me. "Clara arranges parties. She's quite talented, like a personal concierge." I was not a concierge. I owned a company with international clients. But correcting her would have made me look defensive, and that was the last thing she wanted me to appear: emotional, unrefined, not Davenport material. Leo never defended me. "She doesn't mean anything by it," he'd say afterward, massaging my shoulders. "It's just her way." Her way was to remind me that I didn't belong. Still, I kept my head down and worked. My business grew. Polaris Events expanded to New York, then D.C. I was hired for a private dinner for a senator's re-election campaign, and afterward, the Davenports' friends began treating me differently, polite, even respectful. For a while, I thought things might change. But Vivian's control ran deeper than approval. She had built her identity on appearances. A daughter-in-law who was ambitious and independent didn't fit that picture. I began noticing how Leo changed when she was around, quieter, more careful, more like her. The warmth I fell in love with was replaced by a calculated calm, as if every word needed Vivian's silent approval. At dinners, I'd sit quietly, smiling while they discussed investments and estates I knew nothing about. When I spoke, Vivian would nod with that patronizing smile that made my stomach twist. How charming, she'd say whenever I mentioned my work. You must enjoy staying busy. Busy, not successful. Busy, like a hobby. The first year of marriage was manageable. The second was tolerable. By the third, I started counting the days between genuine conversations with my husband. And then came the birthday. Vivian's 70th birthday wasn't just a family event, it was a production. Leo announced it at dinner one night like he was unveiling a royal decree. Mom wants to celebrate in Florence, he said. She thought it'd be special if you handled the planning. He looked proud, like he was offering me an honor. I smiled tightly. Of course. I'd love to. Inside, I already knew what that meant. Free labor, full responsibility, zero credit. But the planner in me couldn't resist the challenge. A week-long celebration across Tuscany, culminating in a dinner at La Scala Vista, one of Florence's most exclusive restaurants. Private vineyard tours, an opera evening, designer shopping excursions, it was the kind of event that could have landed on magazine covers. So I threw myself into it. For months, I handled every booking, every call, every payment. My company covered initial deposits through our credit line while the Davenports' transfers were processing. Leo brushed it off as a technical delay. I believed him. Then, one morning, I opened his laptop to print flight itineraries and saw a spreadsheet open: property listings, liquidations, unpaid loans. Davenport Holdings was in trouble. Big trouble. I confronted Leo gently. Are you okay financially? I asked. Some of the vendor payments haven't gone through. He smiled that practiced smile. It's just timing. Dad's diversifying assets. Nothing to worry about. But there was something to worry about. I started receiving calls from vendors asking if I could reconfirm guarantees. I covered the missing payments with company funds to avoid delays. It wasn't the first time I'd saved a project. I told myself it was just part of the job. 2 weeks before the flight, Leo seemed distant. Always on the phone. Always handling work stuff. One morning, his phone buzzed while he was showering. A message from Vanessa H. Can't wait to see you in Florence, Red Heart. My stomach dropped. I didn't want to open it. But I did. The thread went back months: daily texts, travel plans, a baby ultrasound. I stared at the screen until the steam from the bathroom faded into cold air. When he came out, I was sitting on the bed, expressionless. He smiled, oblivious. You okay? Fine, I said. Just thinking about logistics. And I was, just not the kind he imagined. I forwarded the screenshots to myself, deleted them from his phone, and finished packing. We boarded the plane to Italy 2 days later. Vivian was radiant in her cream travel suit, surrounded by family, staff, and laughter. Leo held my hand, oblivious to how cold mine felt. Out the window, as Boston disappeared beneath the clouds, I promised myself one thing. If they were going to turn my life into a performance, I would rewrite the ending. Florence glowed like molten gold when our plane landed. From the window, I watched the sunlight slide across the domes and terracotta rooftops, the kind of view that usually takes my breath away. But that day, I felt nothing. Our convoy of sleek black vans waited outside the airport. I'd arranged everything: the drivers, the routes, even the chilled water in the cup holders. Vivian stepped out first, her heels clicking on the pavement. I thought I specified Mercedes, she said, eyeing the vehicles. They are, I replied. Just the newest models. She gave a thin smile. They look practical. The word practical rolled off her tongue like an insult. The Davenports were perfectionists of a particular breed, people who measured status not by luxury itself, but by how naturally one could act as if it didn't matter. I rode alone in the last car, behind the others, watching their silhouettes reflected in the tinted glass ahead. It was poetic, I thought, being part of the convoy yet invisible. The Hotel Illinois Magnifico Firenze was one of the most exclusive in the city. I'd spent months negotiating suites with the best views, coordinating private check-ins, arranging baskets filled with Tuscan olive oils and artisan chocolates. As we entered the grand lobby, I turned to the concierge. "Mrs. Davenport prefers white lilies in her suite," I reminded him quietly. He nodded. "Of course, Signora Bennet." "Already done." Vivian didn't notice. She was already complaining about the lighting. "It's too modern," she said, lifting her sunglasses. "And this scent, is that citrus?" I told Leo the first prefer jasmine. Leo just smiled at her indulgently, like a boy humoring his mother. I checked us in, collected keys, and followed them to the private elevator. Vivian's suite overlooked the Arno River. Mine and Leo's had a terrace facing the Duomo, breathtaking, really. But the moment we entered, his phone rang. He stepped onto the balcony. "Work," he mouthed. For 10 minutes, he spoke in a low tone. When he came back, I asked, "Still investment issues?" He nodded, avoiding my eyes. "Nothing major." "Don't worry." It was a phrase I had learned to hate. The next day began the slow unraveling. At breakfast, I arrived to find the family already eating. My seat had been filled by Vivian's friend, who just happened to be in town. No one offered to move. "It's fine," I said with a tight smile and took a separate table. When I tried to discuss the schedule for the vineyard visit, Vivian waved a manicured hand. "Oh, we decided to skip that. The family wants to do some private shopping instead." "The family?" I asked. "Yes, dear. You wouldn't enjoy it, too chaotic." Her tone was honeyed poison. That became the rhythm of the trip: excluded, dismissed, ignored. Plans changed without notice. Invitations forgotten. And Leo, my husband, drifted further away, always distracted, always tired, always conveniently out of reach. On the third day, the truth appeared in plain sight. Leo rushed out in the morning, leaving his briefcase unlocked. I wasn't planning to look, I really wasn't, but something in me snapped. Inside, I found printed documents, a draft separation agreement, dated 2 months earlier. The settlement offered me nearly nothing. And attached was a handwritten note in Vivian's looping cursive. "Once this is over, we'll make sure Vanessa feels welcomed back properly." My hands trembled. I sat on the bed, reading the words again and again until they blurred. The birthday dinner wasn't just a celebration, it was the stage for my public dismissal. They were going to make it look like my decision. A humiliation wrapped in civility. I took out my phone, photographed every page, and began to think. That evening, I acted as if nothing had changed. I attended their aperitivo at the rooftop bar, laughed at meaningless jokes, nodded through conversations that circled around art auctions and investment funds. But every smile I gave was measured. Every detail I noted, every weakness, filed away like evidence. If they wanted a performance, I would give them one worthy of my profession. The morning of the dinner arrived crystal clear. The city hummed with tourists and distant church bells. Vivian's suite was buzzing with activity: stylists, makeup artists, assistants. I could hear her voice through the door, sharp and commanding. "Make sure the pearls are cleaned. And I want the centerpiece changed, no hydrangeas, they look provincial." I dressed in silence, slipping into a navy silk gown I'd bought weeks earlier. The fabric was smooth, armor-like. Leo glanced at me briefly as he adjusted his cufflinks. "You look nice," he said. "Thank you," I replied flatly. He didn't notice my detachment. He rarely did anymore. At noon, I went downstairs to the business center to confirm final details with the restaurant, La Scala Vista. Everything was perfect: the table arrangements, the floral installations, the imported caviar Vivian demanded. As I was finishing the call, I heard her voice from behind the divider wall. She was speaking to the concierge. "There will be 11 seats, not 12, she said sharply. A pause. Then, "No, that won't be a problem. My son and I discussed it. His wife will not be staying for the dinner, a private family matter." I froze. My name, my existence, erased in one practical sentence. My hands clenched around my phone. For a moment, I thought I might walk in there, confront her, scream, but instead, I did what I've always done best. I stayed calm. I adjusted the plan. I returned to my suite, opened my laptop, and drafted a list titled Contingencies. If they wanted to erase me from their event, I would erase their event from existence. Over the next few hours, I quietly reached out to key contacts, the vineyard, the yacht company, the villa in Tuscany. I prepared the necessary authorizations to reverse deposits. All accounts had been paid through my company's credit line. Legally, the contracts were under my name. Then I made one last call, to Marco, the manager of La Scala Vista. "Marco, it's Clara Bennett," I said, keeping my tone steady. "I may need to make some last-minute adjustments this evening. Can I count on your discretion?" "Of course, Signora Bennett," he said. "Anything you need." "Perfect," I replied. "I'll see you in a few hours." By sunset, the city glowed in amber light. The Davenports gathered in the hotel lobby, a picture of wealth and composure. Vivian in ivory Chanel, Richard in his tailored suit, Leo looking every bit the loyal son. When I joined them, Vivian's lips curved. "Clara, how lovely you look," she said, air-kissing the air beside my cheek. "We're just waiting for the cars." The ride to La Scala Vista was silent. I stared out the window at the fading sky, at Florence slipping by like a painting. Leo's reflection in the glass looked unfamiliar, older, colder. I wondered, fleetingly, if there was a moment he could have saved us. Maybe years ago, when love still outweighed image. But that man was long gone. The elevator opened to the rooftop terrace. It was breathtaking, candles flickering, the Arno glinting below, the hum of soft Italian jazz. A perfect scene. My scene. The family entered, admiring the setup. I stayed a few steps behind, scanning the table, 11 chairs. Vivian turned, pretending surprise. "Oh dear, did someone miscount?" Leo chuckled. "Guess we did." A ripple of laughter followed, light and rehearsed. I stood there, feeling something shift inside me, not anger, not grief, just finality. "Seems I'm not part of the count," I said quietly. And then I turned and walked out. I didn't rush. The warm air of Florence hit me as I stepped outside the restaurant, and the sound of laughter trailed behind me like the echo of a life I no longer belonged to. The valet looked up, uncertain whether to offer me a car. "I'm fine," I said quietly. "Just a short walk." Across the narrow street stood a small cafe, its terrace strewn with soft lights and the smell of roasted espresso beans drifting through the air. I sat, ordered a macchiato, and opened my laptop. For once, I wasn't planning someone else's event, I was dismantling one. First, La Scala Vista. I logged into my event management dashboard and pulled up the contract. The payments had all been processed through my company's corporate card. That meant I could revoke authorization. I composed a short message to Marco, the restaurant manager. "Marco, this is Clara Bennett, event coordinator for tonight's booking under the Davenport name. Please proceed with immediate cancellation and refund processing. All payments were issued via Polaris Events account. I assume full responsibility for reversals." Within minutes, he replied. "Signora Bennett, are you certain? The guests are already here." "I'm certain," I wrote back. "Execute the reversal now." Next came the vineyard, the yacht charter, the Tuscan villa. Each email was clinical, polite, final. Every regret to inform became another line severing me from them. By the time my espresso cooled, everything was undone. My phone started vibrating on the table. "Leo." I ignored the first call. Then the second. Then the third. By the fourth, I answered. "Where are you?" His voice hissed through the line. "The restaurant just told us the account was reversed. They say there's no payment." "Correct," I said simply. "What the hell do you mean, correct?" "I cancelled it." "You what?" Clara, this is my mother's birthday. Seems I'm not family, I said, calm as glass. So I assumed it wasn't my responsibility to pay for family celebrations. There was a pause, then a sharp breath. You're being childish, he snapped. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is for my mother? I know exactly how humiliating it is, I said. That's why I chose it. I finished my drink, left a few euros on the table, and crossed the street again. This time, I entered the restaurant through the service door. Marco met me there, nervous. Signora Bennett, this is unusual. I know, I said. I just need you to tell them the bill must be settled immediately. No exceptions. He hesitated. And if they refuse? Then you stop service, I said. But give me 5 minutes first. He nodded. From the shadow of the alcove near the kitchen, I watched the Davenports. The terrace glowed under candlelight, the skyline of Florence shimmering behind them. The scene was elegant, cinematic, everything I'd planned. Vivian sat at the head of the table, pearls gleaming, glass raised mid-toast. Leo looked like the perfect son again, smiling, pretending, acting. For a moment, I understood the psychology of it all, how this family had survived for generations on performance. Then Marco approached. He leaned toward Richard Davenport, murmuring something low. Richard frowned, gesturing for clarification. Then his expression changed from polite confusion to visible alarm. The conversation rippled across the table like a slow wave. Vivian's hand froze midair. What's going on? Richard cleared his throat. Apparently, the event isn't paid for. What? Marco apologized softly. Signora, the payment was reversed by the account holder. Without reinstatement, we cannot continue the service. The silence that followed was pure theater. 12 faces, frozen. The music stopped. Leo's chair scraped against the floor as he stood. Excuse me, he said, his voice shaking, phone already in hand. He dialed my number again. I answered. Enjoying dinner? Clara, what have you done? Something memorable. You need to fix this right now. I'm done fixing things for you, Leo. He lowered his voice, desperate. You don't understand. This could ruin us. Investors are here tonight. I know, I said. That's why it's perfect timing. You've lost your mind. Maybe. Or maybe I just found it. I stepped out from the alcove and walked toward the table. The guests' heads turned as I appeared, silent, composed, untouchable. Vivian's voice cracked first. How dare you interrupt? I built this night, I said evenly. I can end it too. Leo took a step forward. Clara, please. No, Leo. You and your family have spent years pretending I don't exist. Tonight, I returned the favor. Vivian stood, her pearls trembling. You've embarrassed us in front of our friends, our business partners. I tilted my head. You did that yourselves when you removed my seat. Richard's voice was low but furious. You'll regret this. I doubt it, I said. Every contract, every booking, every payment was under my name. All I did was withdraw my support. Vivian's eyes burned. You'll never work in this city again. I smiled faintly. Florence isn't my city. But reputation travels, doesn't it? I turned to Leo. By the way, tell Vanessa congratulations. 4 months, right? The air went dead. Vivian's painted smile faltered completely. Leo's face drained of color. How? I read the messages, I said. Just like I read your separation script for tonight. A nice touch, by the way, humiliating me at dinner, making it look mutual. You really thought of everything. The entire table watched, transfixed. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving. Except, I continued, you didn't think I'd have the power to do the same to you. I walked away then. No shouting, no tears. just the sound of my heels against the marble floor. Behind me, chaos erupted, raised voices, confusion, panic. Marco approached Vivian again, asking for immediate payment. Richard pulled out his card, it declined. He tried another, same result. Later, I learned they had to leave Vivian's Bulgari bracelet as collateral until funds could be wired. The story spread quickly through Florence's luxury circles, the American family who couldn't pay their bill. By morning, every vendor I hadn't already contacted was demanding cash up front. The Davenports' reputation, the one they valued more than love, truth, or decency, was gone. 2 days later, I boarded a plane home. Alone. I upgraded myself to first class using the miles I'd earned from planning their vacations. It felt poetic. Somewhere over the Atlantic, I opened my laptop and typed one final email, to my lawyer. I attached copies of the Davenports' offshore accounts, fraudulent transfers, and hidden assets. Hold these securely, I wrote. Release if they pursue litigation. When I landed in Boston, I didn't go home to the brownstone. I went to a small apartment overlooking the Charles River, one I'd quietly leased months earlier, just in case. 2 days later, I sent movers to collect my belongings. I took only what was mine, clothes, personal items, and my collection of first-edition books. Everything else, furniture, art, gifts, I left behind. Let them keep the pieces of the life they'd built on lies. The fallout came fast. The Boston Globe ran a short piece. Davenport Holdings under federal review for financial irregularities. It didn't make front-page news, but it was enough to end their illusion. Investors pulled out. Board members resigned. Vivian disappeared from the charity circuit. Leo showed up at my new apartment a week later. He looked older, defeated. You win, he said quietly. Happy? No, I said. But I'm free. He ran his hands through his hair. The SEC is investigating Dad. Mom's health is failing. Vanessa's pregnant. Everything's falling apart. Then maybe it's time you learn what real rebuilding looks like. He stared at me. I never meant for this to happen. Yes, you did, I said. You just didn't think I'd fight back. Months passed. My business thrived, in fact, boomed. Clients called from New York and Paris, saying they admired my discretion and precision. Apparently, being the woman who outmaneuvered an entire dynasty had its advantages. 6 months later, I received an invitation that made me laugh. Vivian Davenport requests your proposal for her charity gala. I declined. Politely. Professionally. Deliciously. A year to the day after the dinner, I stood once again in Italy, this time on the Amalfi Coast, overseeing a wedding for a celebrity couple. The ocean shimmered below, the air smelled like lemons and salt, and my staff moved with quiet efficiency under my direction. As the sun dipped behind the cliffs, I raised a glass of Prosecco to the horizon. The chair that had once been missing no longer mattered. I had built my own table. And this time, there would always be a seat, just for me.